Hey friends, so we've all heard that it takes 10,000 hours to become a master at something. But what does that actually look like in reality? Is it true? 6 years ago, I decided to test the rule out and began measuring all of the time I spent on art. And so far, I've logged in an exact total of 11,770 hours and 40 minutes, and it's honestly been life-changing. When I began the experiment as a depressed uni graduate who had 0 followers and drew like this, I never expected to reach a point where I could work with various companies, have over 200,000 followers across YouTube and X/Twitter, and even winning an award in this year's Honkai Star Rail Creator Competition. So in this video, I'm going to share with you the details of everything that happened in those 11,000 hours. From how my art changed at each 1,000 hour of the journey, to all of the big challenges I faced and the key lessons I had to learn to overcome them. By the way, if you're new here, I'm Ori, an artist and soon-to-be VTuber. And on this channel, we dive into all things drawing, from tips and tutorials to exploring how we can level up both our art and ourselves. Okay, let's start right at the beginning, where I was before starting the challenge and why I decided to do it. So I like to draw as a kid, and I would often be doodling during classes and sometimes at home too, when I wasn't busy watching anime or feeding my video game addiction. I dreamt of one day becoming a manga artist, but as time went on, I found the dream kind of slowly getting further away as I got older. I was from Australia, and there wasn't a place that taught anime style art, and going to Japan to study art there was too expensive. And my Japanese wasn't that good yet at the time. My family also didn't support what I wanted to do and told me to pursue something more stable and get a real job, because I could always draw in my free time, they told me. Which, spoiler alert for the younger viewers out there, you basically get less and less of the more you adult. And so after graduating high school, I went to do a teaching degree because at least I got to study Japanese as part of it. And I got decent grades and I didn't really mind teaching. But the thing is, when you have a calling to be a creator and you ignore it, everything just feels wrong and it just kinda eats at you on the inside. This was honestly a dark time in my life and I became really depressed. On the outside, everything looked like it was going well and I was doing everything you were meant to do, like getting good grades and doing a good job at work. But on the inside, I was a complete mess. I stopped seeing meaning in my life or anything else I was doing, and at some point I was like, man, screw this, I just can't take it anymore. I was completely miserable and unhappy, so I quit teaching at schools and instead decided to just work part-time as a private tutor so I could pursue my original goal of drawing manga. And because my art journey began from a really low point in my life and feeling super depressed, I knew that managing my emotional well-being would be just as important as improving my art skills. I think we creators just generally deal with a lot of challenges on the inside, with things like self-doubt, anxiety, and burnout, which can sometimes really hold us back. Which is why I'd like to thank BetterHelp for kindly sponsoring today's video. BetterHelp makes it easy to find the support you need by connecting you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice, all from the comfort of your own home. The way it works is that you just go to their site, fill out a few questions, and you'll be matched with a professional who has years of experience helping people with struggles just like yours. It usually only takes 48 hours to get connected, and you can communicate with your therapist however you feel comfortable, whether it's through messaging, phone call, or video chat. In trying it out myself, I honestly wasn't sure what to expect since I had never done a therapy session before. But it turned out to be really nice to be able to talk to someone that's professionally trained about some of the challenges I'm facing and learn effective ways for dealing with them. So whether you're a creator or just a normal human being going through a tough time, you can connect with a therapist and get support from the comfort of your own home by going to betterhelp.com/ordays or select the name Ordays during sign-up, and you'll also enjoy a special discount on your first month. So after quitting my job to chase my dreams, you'd think I'd just do the damn thing and draw the manga. But nope. I spent a long time coming up with all these different story ideas and characters and doing a ton of research and watching tutorials on YouTube, but never actually completing anything. It was only when the girl I was dating at the time said to me, "Ori, you need to stop dreaming and start seeing reality," that I realized I hadn't gotten anything done. The relationship had a lot of issues, so we went our separate ways soon after that. But I'm actually really grateful she told me that because it was the wake-up call I needed. And I was like, no, I know I can do this and I can prove it. So I spent the next few months forcing myself to complete a short manga, and feeling confident with my masterpiece, on the 2nd of May 2018, I submitted it to a competition held by the only publisher at the time that didn't require me to give a Japanese address in order to submit the work. And nothing happened. I waited and waited, weeks went by and still no response. That's odd. Did they not get my email? I mean, you'd think it would be obvious that there was no way the very first work of an absolute beginner was going to win any awards, let alone be worth the time for a publisher to give feedback to. But I had what's known as the Dunning-Kruger effect, where as a beginner, you tend to overestimate how good you actually are. It was only when I showed one of my friends my masterpiece that they kinda laughed and said, "Oh, it looks like a B-rate manga." And that was when I realized my drawing skills basically sucked. Like, although I drew when I was younger, I never really learned how to draw properly. And because I also stopped drawing when I went to uni, my skills were pretty much still the same, if not worse, than where it was when I was in high school. But for some reason, I didn't really feel down about it. In fact, I actually remember feeling excited because up until then, I had never completed anything, so I never gotten any feedback. But because I finally finished the manga and put it out there, I was finally able to get it from my friends, and also from the publisher, since being ignored is also feedback that my skills weren't good enough yet. So this was the first important lesson I had to learn in my art journey. You need to not only get started, but also finish things and put it out there. It's only through completing things that you'll get the feedback you need to know to figure out what the next step is. And because an object in motion stays in motion, you also start building this momentum and confidence in yourself, which actually makes it easier to do the next thing. Coming back to the story, now that I knew that the next step I had to take was to improve my drawing skills, I started doing research and putting together my own plan for learning art, and it wasn't long before I came across the 10,000 hour rule. A lot of the personal development type ebooks I was reading at the time kept mentioning it over and over again, not to mention the YouTube gurus, and I literally had nothing to lose. So I was like, if 10,000 hours is what I need to do in order to get good, then why don't I just do it? And I decided to take on the challenge. So I downloaded this time tracking app, created 2 categories, input for the tasks related to learning and practicing, and output for tasks related to actually making art. And starting from 27th September 2018, I began to track everything. To put it simply, the first 2,000 hours was a mess. Upon taking some traditional courses on the fundamentals, I quickly realized that I liked painting, and my goals changed from becoming a manga artist to becoming more of an anime-style illustrator. However, I still had no idea what I was doing, and the number of things I felt I needed to learn was overwhelming. It's like standing at the base of a massive mountain, looking up and going, how the hell am I ever going to climb this thing? Looking back, I can honestly say that this was probably one of the most difficult parts of the entire journey. Because later on, once your skills improve enough, things get more fun since your work begins to resonate with an audience, and you start getting likes and fans and commissions. So it's easier to be motivated because you can kind of physically see the rewards of the work you're doing, but at the start, you don't get any of that. Like everyone else starting out, I was an unknown beginner with no followers, and I'd post the art I would painstakingly make, but barely get any reaction. And I'm pretty sure my friends and family probably thought I was wasting my time. So consistency is key, but motivation can be really hard to come by at this stage. So one of the most valuable lessons I learned during this time was the importance of living by an inner scorecard, which is a concept championed by the famous investor Warren Buffett. The idea is about measuring success by our own standards and values as opposed to external validation like getting likes, followers, commissions, or the approval of our family, friends, and even strangers, because those things are largely out of our control. So instead, I found it helpful to measure success by the effort I was putting to improve my craft, the number of hours I was logging in, and whether I tried my best and gave it my all on a given day. I trusted that if I put in the time and effort, the results would eventually take care of itself. And by focusing on this inner scorecard, I was able to keep going through these tough early stages, even when the progress was slow and it didn't seem like I was getting any closer to my goals. Between 2,000 and 3,000 hours, I felt like I was finally starting to make good progress. It started to feel like my art didn't suck so much anymore, and so drawing became more fun. A big part of it was due to how I started studying how the artists I admired created their art. Because for some reason, for a long time, I had this kind of naive notion that I needed to be completely original in my work. And I resisted the idea of imitating other people's styles because I thought, I don't want to copy. I need to have my own unique style. But the truth is, that mindset was very much holding me back. It was only when I came across a book called Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon that I was able to change how I thought about creativity and originality. In the book, Kleon emphasizes that nothing is entirely original. Basically, every creative work builds on what came before it. So instead of trying to avoid imitation, artists should embrace their influences and draw inspiration from them. Just to be clear though, the concept of stealing talked about in the book means borrowing ideas and influences from various sources and not tracing someone else's work and trying to pass it off as your own. The whole goal is to transform these influences into something unique and personal to us. So this idea resonated with me deeply and helped me understand that I had just been thinking about originality in the wrong way, and imitating and studying the art we admire is a way to develop our own. This also reminded me of an experience I had when I was studying to become a teacher at uni. Basically, each year, we were assigned to learn under a mentor for our practical exam. And one year, I was lucky enough to work with Mrs. M, who was the best teacher I had ever seen. Mrs. M was completely on a different level. She had this deep understanding of the science behind learning, and she used unconventional teaching methods that I'd never seen before. And she flew around the country to speak at teaching conferences. Plus, her students all loved her. And just to give an example, the typical way a teacher would teach Japanese is through having a textbook, saying a sentence, and asking the students to repeat it and all that stuff. But the way Mrs. M taught her students, who were as young as like grade 5, would be by teaching them another subject like home economics, completely in Japanese without using a single word of English, which I would find out later is a method known as CLIL. And she mentioned that through her testing, she found that the students both learned and enjoyed the lessons more this way compared to the more traditional methods. So I was just blown away by everything, and one day I asked her how she became so good at teaching. And Mrs. M replied to me with a quote from Isaac Newton. "You know, Ori, if I can see far, it's only because I stand on the shoulders of giants." She then showed me all of these books and research papers she was currently reading, and it was then I realized that she was just constantly learning from the giants from the past and present in order to keep improving her own skills as a teacher. And I think I finally understood what she meant during this phase of my art journey. Like, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. People further ahead in the art journey have already figured out a lot about what works, so we can start by learning from them first, such as by studying from our favorite anime, which I've actually made a whole free guide on, and I'll leave a link to it down below in case you want to check it out. But oddly enough, I found that when we stand on the shoulders of giants, it actually becomes easier for us to find our own voice that's both unique and resonates with other people. Starting from around 3,000 hours onward, it really just became about the grind. Unlike the earlier stages where I was still trying to figure things out, by this point I had a good idea of what I needed to do to improve. So it was pretty much just about putting in the work and creating as much output as possible. Fortunately, this was also the time when I started to see external results. I personally started to feel that my art looked pretty good, and people also started resonating with it. Every time I posted a piece, I was consistently receiving a few thousand likes and get these encouraging comments. And I was building a small but decent sized following. Finally having this kind of positive feedback from the outside world after 3 years of nothing really working was definitely motivating, and it helped make going through the grind a bit easier. Around this time, I also started getting feedback from a mentor, and in one of our feedback sessions, I remember him telling me that it would take another 3 years for me to reach a pro level. I think some people might hear that and go, 3 more years of this? Really? But for me at the time, that was actually super motivating. Because in my mind, I had already prepared myself for it taking another 5 to 10 years. So hearing 3 years was really exciting, and I remember responding to him with "kakugo shitemasu," which in Japanese means "I'm prepared for it." Here's the actual notes I took from the feedback session back in 26th of January 2021. At my current level, it will take me 3 more years to become pro. This is motivating because it's 3 years, not 5 or 10. It's not that much more time. At my current level, he couldn't ask me to do work yet. This is the brutal reality I must face, but I also believe I'll prevail in the end. I will improve. This was a memorable turning point for me, and I just accepted that I wasn't good enough yet. And so what I needed to do was face reality and all of my flaws and weaknesses head on, and believe that if I did that and continued to put in the work and improve, I would eventually reach that level. Looking back on the journey now, this mindset was very helpful to have, and I actually ended up reaching it faster than 3 years as well. Around the 5,000 hour mark, I started to feel like I was hitting a plateau. My progress was slowing, and I wasn't seeing as much improvement as I had in the earlier stages of the journey. Knowing what I do now, the correct thing to do would have been to analyze all the things that were currently holding me back and identify the biggest one, which is called the bottleneck, and to hone in on it completely. But at the time, I was also getting kind of bored of what I was drawing. So I decided to start learning 3D and concept art techniques, which I had long been interested in. From a social media growth perspective, this was a terrible decision since if you want to grow an audience quickly, sticking to one thing and doing it over and over again is generally the way to go. But I felt it was something I needed to do for my own artistic growth. And at the time, I had also just read the book Range by David Epstein, which argues that creative achievers often have broad interests that span multiple domains. And he makes the case that by learning from various fields, we can apply insights from one area to another, leading to breakthroughs that aren't possible when we focus too narrowly on one thing. So this idea really resonated with me, but I do want to add the caveat that I think it's important to get deep in at least one area if you want to stand out as a creator. To give an RPG game analogy, it's more like picking Warrior as your main class and then later learning Fire Magic to boost your damage, rather than trying to become both a Warrior and Mage at the same time, because you'll be spread too thin and won't excel at either. But overall, I don't really regret making this small detour into 3D and concept art, and it definitely allowed me to pick up some techniques and knowledge that I probably wouldn't have encountered otherwise had I stuck purely to illustration. Another important thing that happened in this period was that I read Cal Newport's book Deep Work, which turned out to be a complete game changer for me. Newport explains there's basically two types of work: deep work and shallow work. Deep work happens when you do cognitively demanding tasks without distraction, like drawing with your complete focus and attention. On the other hand, shallow work involves tasks that don't require much cognitive effort, which we often do while distracted, like answering emails or posting on social media. Understanding this difference is important because deep work is where all the important stuff that push the needle happens. It's where we truly improve our skills and create our best art. So it was then I realized that it wasn't just the quantity of hours I was putting in that mattered, but also the quality of those hours mattered as well. Because back then, I'd often draw while watching VTuber streams or listening to podcasts. But when I started to differentiate and be conscious of when I was doing deep work or not, and focusing entirely on my art without distractions, I found that I just got so much more done and the quality of the work improved too. Overall, these two things helped me get through some of the plateau problems I was facing, but it was what happened next that really changed things for me. It was around 7,000 hours into the journey when I finally realized that the bottleneck holding me back was my drawing skills, and that I needed to focus all of my attention on improving it. Because up until that point, I had just spent a lot of time practicing painting, but I had never really focused on practicing my drawing skills, which in hindsight is basically the foundation of anime style art. The reason I neglected it for so long was because I had this incorrect understanding that since it's anime and it's all stylized anyway, you can do whatever you want and there are no rules. Although that's technically true, I found out that there are principles that lead to good stylization which resonates with people. So I basically decided to stop everything I was doing and completely shift all of my attention on tackling it. One key lesson I learned during this period was that there isn't one big skill called drawing or art that you can master and suddenly be great at it. Instead, it's made up of hundreds of smaller, specific skills that you can learn and improve individually. It's kind of like those isekai anime where the protagonist has the identify skill, and they can see all the different skills people have, like poison resistance level 1, fire magic level 2, strength level 3. With art, it's similar, but instead you have things like hand anatomy level 1, head drawing level 3, facial expressions level 2, and so on. And this is basically why it takes so long to get good, because there's a lot of these small individual skills you need to pick up to create at a high level. But instead of feeling overwhelmed, I found this realization to be incredibly empowering, because every single one of these skills can be practiced and learned, and we don't need to master them all either. In fact, it's entirely up to us to choose which skills we want to learn and how much we want to level them up based on our art goals. So during this period, I just spent a lot of time hunting those specific skills and getting really good at them in order to break through the plateau. And that led to some major improvements to my art, which brings us to the next phase. Okay, so I found that the journey of a lot of creators who make it and establish themselves in the space follows sort of this trajectory, which I call the creator curve. The idea is that at the start, you barely make any noticeable progress. And for years, you're just toiling away, grinding, putting in the hours, and you have no idea when or even if it's going to work out. But eventually, you reach this initial breakthrough point. And from there, the amount of success you have starts to compound and grow a lot faster. By the way, not everyone's goals are the same, so you can define success in whichever way you find meaningful. For me, this breakthrough happened after I addressed the bottlenecks in the previous phase, because it was then my art finally started to resonate with a lot of people and I began gaining a lot of traction on social media. I didn't realize this until I added up the numbers, but it was actually right around the 10,000 hour mark that I reached my initial breakthrough point. That was when my YouTube channel started blowing up, and I also did a commission for Hololive's Watame. But I don't think there's anything magical about the number 10,000. Some people will reach their breakthrough point earlier in the journey, and some a little later. So instead, I think the key takeaway is that the hard work and effort we put in builds up over time, even if you can't see it in the moment. And eventually, it reaches critical mass and we'll experience a breakthrough. But after this was when things got very confusing for me. Because for the past 10,000 hours, it was all just about getting better and putting stuff out there. But what I found is that once you start breaking through, the game changes a bit. You begin to get a lot of opportunities. And since you're still not used to it, you kind of just want to accept everything that comes your way, but it ends up scattering you in a million different directions. Eventually, you reach this point where you just have more opportunities than you can physically take on. And that's when I found that prioritizing and understanding who you are as a creator and what you really want to do becomes the key skill to practice and learn. So a lot of this phase for me has been about figuring out my own identity as a creator and what I truly want to focus on. Art has always been an ongoing journey of self-discovery for me, and that's still true today. But I do know one thing, and that's the fact that I love creating and I'll never stop, whether it's through the form of a painting or a video like this. If you're someone that's just starting out and just witnessed the entirety of my 11,770 hour journey and just feel daunted by everything, don't be. Because art is a journey, not a destination, and it's something you can take one step at a time. If you're still watching, thanks for making it all the way to the end, and you'll probably be interested in this video where I share the 4 things I wish I knew when I began this whole 11,000 hour art journey. This was Ori, and I'll see you guys again, hopefully, at 20,000 hours. Bye!